On the 1st of September 2019, the Japanese New Standard format received its most recent banlist update at the time. The two changes that were made were between relaxing a card that had little relevance in the meta and deck that was in, and correcting a design mistake that plagued the game since its initial print back in December 2018. But behind all these changes, which have consistently been appearing about twice a year, there's a section of the banlist that has stood still for more than 14 months. Look even further beyond that and you find a format whose restrictions have changed only 3 times in the past 5 years, while the most prevailing format near standard had 3 times as many banlists over the same period. So what exactly is this small insignificant list to decide that time seemingly forgot? Let's discuss the current state of standard. Standard is the oldest tournament format that exists. Standard is to Weiss what Legacy is to Magic. It's a format that allows players to play any card ever printed, with obvious jerk-like exceptions, into a deck of their own choosing. But while Legacy is dying among mistakes of the reserve list in the early 90s, Weiss doesn't have such a problem. But the format is probably even in a more dire state, but the format probably doesn't exist outside of niche tournaments and the thought experiments of curious brewers. You could split the current standard ban list into 2 halves. The first group of cards are what I call banned by design. Simply put, these cards are gimmicks that aren't meant to see serious play, whether by adding a non-existent 5th colour to the game, unless you want to try a wacky build of pastel palettes, or by having an overstated gimmick which landed the cards banned before the cards hit the shelves on day 1. Generally speaking, they're relatively harmless. Relatively harmless compared to the setting category of our ban list, and they've definitely earned it. 2 of these cards have been banned since the very first standard ban list back in the good old days of 2010. Out of these 3 remaining cards, 2 of these allow you to determine the top of either your or your opponent's deck. Playing in a creek is similar but not quite Brainstorm. It allows you to dig too deep and put 2 cards back. Normally not that bad, but in a game where the top of your library matters a whole lot more, and you can start to consider how this can be abusable from setting up perfect brainstorms, perfect triggers, or by outright helping some decks to play from the top, although Bang Team kinda does this already. You can see where this card can go nuts. The second of these cards look innocuous enough. It's just a plain assist with some trinket text. But if you had any form of encore ability, that trinket text isn't exactly trinket text anymore. You can easily stack your opponent's deck of characters from their waiting room and ensure that if they're at level 3, they're never going to see another turn again. And now we go to our final ban card. While the previous 2 cards have a decent amount of deck manipulation, this card will guarantee your opponent's feelings will be as empty as their soon-to-be non-existent hand. This card is a 2-for-1 trade with your opponent at any and every time, and punishes your opponent for progressing the game even if they don't kill it through combat. Consider that this card can also be paired with an encore giver, like the previous card, where you trade your hand for theirs, and this card is bound to cause a truckload of misery. But thankfully they won't, because they're banned. Standard has the potential to be a format of unlimited possibilities, but the official restriction list is probably way out of date. Because few players play the format, there isn't any meta or well-known builds that are known to steamroll the format, because the starter simply doesn't exist. And players don't want to build decks because people know there's just some more degenerate combos out there just waiting to be discovered. And why build a format nobody plays when near standard is just as good? Until something changes, nothing will change, and standard will forever be the cold, unused corner of the semi-annual near standard restricted update. So what do you think about this seemingly forgotten format? Let us know by giving us a quick pip in a comment, or whatever seems good enough for you. Either way, standard for now remains thought experiment, just like Australia's GP, because it doesn't exist.